I'm very excited.
I'm incredibly excited. Last night I won a few Laserdiscs off eBay. It's supposed to come early next week, so thankfully, coming pretty shortly. Four really good discs, things I really wanted, including shipping less than $9. You can't beat that. I mean, absolutely incredible. It's one of the best deals I've had in a while, just for the price compared to what I'm getting. And I'm really excited because one of them is my favorite silent movie ever. And if you watched my Celebrity Crush video this past Valentine's Day, you know what that movie is. I have a copy of it coming on Laserdisc. I'm really, really excited. And maybe start thinking a little bit about getting silent movies on home media and how crazy ridiculous it is to find good copies of stuff sometimes. It's a really hard thing to get, and it's bizarre because a lot of this stuff is just out there. A lot of it for free now, things that are in the public domain and stuff like that. But it's really hard to get actual physical copies sometimes. And going through, figuring out the movies that I want, really looking and seeing what I want from the late teens through some early sound pictures of like the 30s into the early 40s, looking at those films, the vast majority of those are available on Laserdisc. And from what I've experienced and from what I've learned talking to others and people that also collect and like this type of thing and collect on Laserdisc, a lot of those movies look and sound the best on the Laserdisc format. A lot of early movies, I really think Laserdisc is the perfect format for almost every film up until you hit the 50s, 60s, and then I think after that it's more of a by film basis. What's better, the Laserdisc versus the DVD versus the Blu-ray? I think it's more of a by film type thing or by TV series. But I think when you look at early sound and silent pictures, basically black and white stuff in general, I think almost universally it's better on Laserdisc, just from, again, what I've learned and what I've experienced personally. And there's so many out there that are in that format. It's really exciting and it's cool, but there's some that aren't, and for those that aren't, it's hard to get stuff. I mean, you have on Laserdisc, you have Killiam, you have Silent Classics, you have the RKO Classic Collection, which RKO is a very underrated studio, a lot of great stuff. But aside from that, it's hard to find certain things, and some stuff too was thought to be lost, or there weren't complete versions until the Laserdisc format was really late in its life or had already been phased out. Some movies that we're finding are more complete or are now completely complete during like the DVD era. And that's where you start running into problems. There are a lot of things that are free digitally online. Even on YouTube you can find hundreds of silent pictures and early sound pictures, but finding actual physical copies to own can be harder. You have some, again, Laserdisc has a lot, there's some that are on VHS. DVD, it comes down to a lot of times some very specific things that were extremely popular, and there's almost always been good copies around, things that were like Best Picture winners, that type of stuff, things that are just well-known classics. I think on DVD it's pretty easy to find stuff like that for silent and early sound, but then as soon as you start getting out of that realm, it becomes really a shit show, really. You have to be very careful in trying to find these things on DVD. You look through Amazon, eBay, all these different sellers, even different forums and things like that. The majority of what you're going to find is DVR copies, things that people are just print-on-demand DVR copies. And for long-term collecting, I really don't trust DVR. For long-term collecting, I really don't trust just recordable DVD movies. It's not the same as getting a factory pressed movie. Just getting a burned DVD off someone's computer, for a lot of times that's what it is for these silent movies. And it can be hard to tell sometimes because a lot of the actual releases of these, if they're not done by, say, like MGM or even like Sony Pictures or Screen Gems, like it was not done by some of those companies, by some really, really small distributors that are distributing physical copies of public domain or really cheap stuff. Sometimes it can be hard to tell the difference between those and just print-on-demand stuff. When you're looking, you have to be really careful. And also, in saying that, even some of the actual product releases, stuff that's not just kind of like burned DVDs, sometimes they're just bad transfers from a worn VHS copy of that movie. Like sometimes it's really just it's a transfer with no alterations in any form from like a worn VHS tape. That happens a lot, or from just bad transfers, or a lot of times it's just a quick job, not very well done. So you have to do a lot of research before even buying just a cheap $10 DVD of an old movie. Do I trust the company that's printing this? Is it actually just being printed on like an actual factory press DVD, or is it just kind of something that eventually down the road is gonna have problems? What is it? What source did they use for that copy? And you have to be really careful too. There'll be something where you look and you find this happens a lot with early European cinema, especially German cinema, where there'll be maybe two different versions, and the original one's like sometimes 20 minutes longer. I mean, huge differences, and you'll find something online that the picture is basically the two editions are almost exactly the same, but one's released by one company and only includes the shorter version, and another one's released by another company and includes the longer version, and there's almost no way to tell them apart, and sometimes the same seller will be selling both copies, and it's a gamble which one you get, and it's really hard, and it's really something where I would like in the future. I don't really bring up silent and early sound films a lot here because I don't have very many physically yet. Eventually, laser is probably going to be, again, I said, the biggest format. We're going to have a whole bunch of those. But eventually, that's something I would even like to do reviews on and talk about some of these movies, because there's some really good ones, some that I really love, and things that you don't necessarily just have to be a fan of that era and those movies to enjoy. There are some that I'd like to focus on that I think people who haven't experienced that era of film can even get into, things that have enough of a timeless quality that you can enjoy them no matter who you are, and then get into some more like stuff that's more of the time, to the point where you have to really appreciate it. But yeah, it's just kind of an interesting thing where it's so hard. You have to be really careful when trying to find these movies and like what kind of quality thing you're getting. And I'd love to see eventually even just a smaller company like something like Mill Creek. I'd love to see just getting decent, okay groups of some of these movies that are in the public domain, or very easy to get and cheap to get the rights to printing copies of. And like I said, that you can just get stuff in the public domain. You can for free. So it's kind of like sometimes you don't. Why would I trust these people that are kind of iffy for a $10 something just burned on a DVD that I can just get online for free? But I like to have physical copies to keep, not just download them off the internet, and that's why I've avoided doing reviews of those early films, because I want to have an actual copy before I do that type of thing. I'd love to see something like these Mill Creek collections, something of this form, with like a silent film collection, like a really good one with a whole bunch packed in here, like these 50 film things, because sometimes you can get for certain actors, you can get collections sometimes of really early films, teens through the early 40s, or some individual films. But I'd like to see something big like this, or something that's not quite as common. Even some films that aren't 100% complete have what we have here as a representation of that movie. I'd love to see something along this line for silent movies, which I haven't really seen to exist. But yeah, anyway, these are really cool. These Mill Creek. We only have 3 collections of these so far, and there's a whole bunch we want. But it's a lot of classic movies, anywhere from the earliest I've seen there's a couple from the very early 30s, and a couple of these I have so far, and they have different ones here. This one, I have Legends of Horror, and the Sci-Fi TV 150 classic episodes, and there are a bunch. They have some like film noir, they have by the decades, they have fabulous 40s, nifty 50s, sensational 60s, something like that, through the 80s I think. I don't think there's a 90s one. But it's stuff that is either public domain or really cheap, sometimes very obscure stuff. And they're cool because sometimes you actually get some really high quality stuff. I mean, just in this Comedy Legends one right here, there were several Peter Sellers films, including things like A Small Show on Earth, like some really good stuff, and My Man Godfrey, which is one of my favorite comedies ever. I can't tell you how many times I've watched that. So it's a weird mix of, sometimes you get some absolute B-movie, crap, like you see, like, Mystery Science Theater quality stuff here, and mixed in with some really good movies. But sometimes even, like some of the stuff in the Legends of Horror one too, sometimes even that obscure B-movie crap sometimes these collections are actually the only way to get a physical copy of them. Sometimes they really don't exist outside of that, so they're pretty cool to get these here. There's a lot of interesting stuff and some weird things you can find, and it's 50 movies, and I don't think I've ever paid more than $10 for these collections so far, so it's really good. And like, this is really cool. This is probably my favorite of the 3 we have so far, the 150 episodes. Sometimes it's some early serials from the 30s, things like Flash Gordon, and just a couple other ones here, like Radar Men from the Moon, and up through, I think, the early 60s is some of the earliest ones here. Some one-off things, serials from the movies. Other ones are like failed TV shows, stuff like that, or some TV shows that didn't last very long. And again, some of these you can't find in other forms. The one problem with these sometimes is they're not always the best quality transfers. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Like this one I talked about, there's a bunch of episodes, there's Flash Gordon on here, but they're definitely not in comparison to the Laserdisc collection that I have. Watching both of them, it's nowhere near the same quality. The Laserdisc version is so much better, and a couple of these have Laserdisc copies here, like Radar Men from the Moon is on Laserdisc, like a box set. But they're not bad, and it's a really cool way of getting very cheaply huge collections of films that are hard to find, and I'd love to see someone come out with silent movie stuff of this type of things, like Theta Bara and Clara Bow, and just like, I don't know, I'd love to see some stuff like that come out, and there really just isn't. It's such a shit show, it's hard to get classic pictures. But these are really cool, the Mill Creek ones. If you like old films, old obscure stuff, all the way through the 80s, these can be really interesting ways to get them. They always come with little booklets that are nice, that give you a little bit of information about every movie here, like who's in it, and when it came out, and that type of stuff. Here's some more collections on the back, and there's a bunch more than that. I mean, they probably have like 30 or 40 different ones here, but some really cool stuff. There's like a drive-in movie one, but yeah, it's silent movies, something I would like to eventually talk more about, and I really love a lot of that, and even some early, again, like 30s and 40s, an era I'd like to really talk about, but it can be hard to get a lot of decent copies, and I think, again, Laserdisc is going to be the best form, so it's going to work its way in here with all the Laserdisc stuff here eventually, and I have my first silent picture on Laserdisc coming in the mail next week, and it's my favorite one ever, so that's a great way to start. So that, even if I don't do like an actual silent movie review on that, maybe I will, I don't know, I'll at least show it and talk about it for who knows how long. But yeah, that's it for now, guys. Just something I want to talk about, because it's not a topic I really tend to bring up very much on this channel, and it's, yeah, if you have any good resources of where to get a lot of good silent movies for, in a physical form, because you can get them online very easily, a lot of them. Let me know if you found like a certain company or a certain seller, or something that you've used a lot yourself and found a lot of really good quality stuff. Let me know below, absolutely. I'm interested in finding any good resources for movies from that time period, and not just like crap burned off somebody's computer. But I'll see you guys in the next episode, and hopefully, remember to come back later this week for some more Laserdisc stuff. I even went ahead and made a brief little intro thing that I would use for silent movie reviews in case I decide to actually go ahead and do that in the future. So let me know if you would be interested in seeing some of those just out of curiosity, or if you're a fan of that area yourself.